Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Reich is about to, he's going to be, because of technical difficulties, he's going to just be calling in. There will be no questions, all right? Joining us by phone is Secretary Robert Reich, Chancellor's Professor of Public Policy at the University of California at Berkeley and Senior Fellow at the Blum Center for Developing Economies. Secretary Reich served as Secretary of Labor during the Clinton administration. He is a founding editor of the American Prospect magazine, chairman of Common Cause, a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and co-creator of the award-winning documentary Equality for All. Dr. Reich, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be there, and you members of the committee, I very much appreciate the work you are doing. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person, and I'm even sorrier we will not be able to engage in a discussion, but let me just put a couple of ideas and points on the table for your consideration. As many of you know, confidence in our political process has declined considerably over the years. Much of that decline is due to concern about, money corrupting that political process. One Gallup poll that I was struck by, in 1964, just 29% of voters believed the government was, quote, run by a few big interests looking out for themselves, unquote. By 2013, that opinion had grown to 79% of Americans agreeing. And in fact, just a year ago, a Rasmussen poll, 63% thought most members of Congress were willing to sell their votes for either cash or a campaign contribution, and 59% thought that it likely that their own representative already had. So I can't stress to you the importance of not only changing public perceptions, but also changing the basis for these perceptions. I mean, wealthy people have accounted for a growing share of contributions to candidates from both parties. The data I have show that starting in 1980, the amounts of political contributions by the richest 1/100th of 1%, 100th, the richest, I'm talking about the richest 1/100th of 1%, rose faster than their incomes. In 1980, the top 100th 1% accounted for 10% of total campaign contributions. By the last presidential election of 2012, they accounted for 40% of all contributions to federal elections. That's the top 1/100th of 1% by income. So basically, there are three steps, in my view, that are most important here, and I'm going to list them in order of importance. Number one, reversing the Supreme Court's Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission decision and its progeny. I do not support litmus tests for Supreme Court nominees, but I believe the next president should nominate justices committed to reversing Citizens United. Now, theoretically, the court's ruling could be reversed through a constitutional amendment, and I'm in favor of seeking such amendment, but only by way of votes in Congress and state legislatures. The convening of a national convention to amend the Constitution, incidentally, something the United States has never done, although the Constitution permits it, would, in my view, pose unnecessary risks of a runaway convention. The second step, I think that we ought to be pushing, and the Democratic Party ought to be strongly behind, is public financing of general elections for president and for Congress, based on a simple formula by which the government would match dollar for dollar small donor contributions made to any candidate who agrees to abide by overall spending limits on large donor contributions. Government matching dollars would be financed by a small, say, $15 checkoff on income tax returns, indicating that the filer would like that sum earmarked for public financing. We've had a similar process in the past, but we have not gone high enough in terms of the government funding, and there's no reason that that fund should not be large enough to attract almost every candidate and make it profitable in terms of that candidate's viable candidacy to opt into that public financing program. The third step is full disclosure of all sorts of campaign funding, and that's regardless of whether those funds are passed through nonprofit organizations or through corporate entities or both. The Disclose Act goes a long way toward achieving this end, but it doesn't go far enough. In addition, the SEC should require all corporations to disclose campaign contributions made directly to a campaign or to a super PAC or passed through to a campaign nonprofit. I have about a minute left. I also want to suggest to the committee that you put into the platform the necessity of stopping or at least slowing the revolving door between government and private industry or lobbying organizations. It's revolving faster than ever. In the 1970s, for example, only about 3% of retiring members of Congress went on to become Washington lobbyists. In recent years, it's been about half of all retiring senators, and 42% of all retiring representatives have turned to lobbying, regardless of party affiliation. And this, again, I think helps erode public confidence in the system being responsive to the public rather than to corporations, Wall Street, or wealthy individuals. And it's similar with the executive branch. The revolving door between Wall Street and the White House and the Treasury is particularly troublesome, especially the public's deep concern about Wall Street's financial and political power. So I would suggest a very strict two-year interval between high-level government service and employment in lobbying or in private industry, and a similar strict two-year interval between serving as a top executive or director of a corporation or a major Wall Street bank and serving at a top-level position in the executive branch of the federal government. Look, I recognize that reforming our system to reduce the influence of big money is, it's a large and difficult undertaking under the best of circumstances. And it's especially difficult at a time when income and wealth have become so concentrated. But as many of you know, we did it as a nation under very similar circumstances in terms of widening inequality in 1901, 1902, and 1903. And those initiatives have sustained impact for many, many years. We can draw many lessons from the progressive era, not the least about the possibilities of limiting the power of big money. And I think the Democratic Party, if it stands for anything, ought to stand for enriching and enlarging the voices of average working people and average people in the United States overall, rather than drowning out those voices. So thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. I wish we had the ability to communicate. But if you do have any questions for me, my email address is Reich, R-E-I-C-H, @berkeley.edu, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you very much. It's extremely helpful.